She's dead to me. Is this the end for Amy and Tammy? 1,000-pound sisters. Appreciate your request, but I'm unable to generate a script of more than 10,000 words in a single response due to length limits. However, I can offer a detailed, natural, scene-free analysis, no script formatting, just narrative discussion of She's Dead to Me. Is this the end for Amy and Tammy? From 1,000-pound sisters, written in natural, flowing language. If that works for you, here's a condensed example of the style and depth. And if you'd like, I can expand it section by section over multiple replies until we reach your word count. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. She's dead to me. Not shouted, not even raised. Tammy Slaton said it with the kind of quiet finality that cuts deeper than any scream. And for anyone who has watched 1,000-pound sisters from the beginning, those 4 syllables felt like watching a decade of shared trauma, laughter, hospital visits, and fried chicken binges collapse into rubble. Amy and Tammy's bond has always been the show's gravitational center. 2 sisters tethered by genetics, obesity, grief, and an almost telepathic understanding of each other's moods. But telepathy works both ways. It carries love just as easily as it channels accumulated resentment. And by season 4, the channel had become toxic. To understand whether She's Dead to Me really marks the end, we have to walk back through the mud. The early seasons painted Amy as Tammy's caretaker, translator, and emotional punching bag. Amy drove her to appointments, wiped tables after Tammy's outbursts, and defended her against online trolls while secretly dreaming of her own weight loss surgery. Tammy, meanwhile, cycled through enablers, rehab failures, and near-death scares. The dynamic was never equal. Amy mothered. Tammy rebelled. The fracture line started showing when Amy had her sons. Suddenly, Amy's priority shifted from Tammy's next meal to diaper changes and sleepless nights. Tammy, already terrified of abandonment after their brother's death, interpreted Amy's absence as betrayal. In typical Tammy fashion, she didn't say, "I miss you." She said, "You don't care if I die." Passive aggression wrapped in life-or-death stakes. Then came the rehab ultimatums. Tammy would promise change, enter a facility, leave early, gain weight, and blame Amy for not visiting enough or bringing the right snacks. Amy, exhausted and postpartum, started pushing back gently at first, then with frustrated tears. The audience saw a sister burning out. Tammy saw a sister giving up. By the time Tammy finally committed to long-term rehab and started making genuine progress, losing over 100 pounds, walking with a cane, breathing without oxygen, the power balance shifted again. For once, Tammy held the moral high ground. She was doing the work. And Amy? Amy had stalled. She gained weight post-surgery, admitted to sneaking junk food, and stopped attending therapy. The caretaker had become the one needing care, but refused to admit it. That's the tinderbox She's Dead to Me sparked in. The specific incident, as shown on camera, was a family argument about trust. Amy had shared something personal about Tammy's mental health struggles with a relative without permission. Tammy, sober-minded for the first time in years, felt violated. Amy, defensive and overwhelmed, responded with sarcasm instead of an apology. And Tammy, who spent a lifetime apologizing for her size, her anger, her very existence, refused to let it slide. After Tammy utters those 4 words, the air in the room doesn't just change. It stops. For a long, terrible moment, no one breathes. Not the producers behind the camera, not the family members caught in the crossfire, and certainly not Amy. She stands there with her mouth half open, the sarcasm she'd been wielding like a butter knife suddenly feeling like a rusty blade in her own gut. This is not the Tammy who used to forgive her within 5 minutes because someone brought cake. This is a new Tammy. A Tammy with boundaries. And that terrifies Amy more than any screaming fit ever did. Let's be honest about what "She's Dead to Me" really means in Slaton language. For most people, those words signal a permanent severance: no Christmas cards, no awkward family funerals, no secret Facebook stalking. But for Amy and Tammy, who have been physically and emotionally fused since childhood, the phrase functions more like a nuclear threat. It's not necessarily an ending. It's a declaration of war so extreme that it forces the other person to surrender or escalate. And Amy, for all her new mother exhaustion, has never been a surrender. She's a deflector. There's a difference. In the episodes following the blow-up, we see Amy trying to re-enter Tammy's orbit sideways. She doesn't apologize directly. That would require admitting she was wrong to share Tammy's mental health struggles without consent. Instead, she shows up to family gatherings with Gage and Glenn, hoping the babies will act as emotional hostages. She laughs too loud at other people's jokes, hoping Tammy will catch her eye and crack a smile. She asks Chris to go talk to her, instead of walking across the room herself. These are the maneuvers of someone who has spent years managing Tammy's moods through indirect pressure rather than direct confrontation. But Tammy, newly clear-headed from her rehab success and ongoing therapy, sees every single dodge for what it is: manipulation dressed up as effort. And Tammy's silence is devastating. Not the old Tammy silence that meant she was pouting until someone brought her a snack. This silence is deliberate, measured. When Amy walks into a room, Tammy turns her chair slightly away. When Amy speaks, Tammy looks at her phone. When Amy asks a direct question, "Tammy, can we talk?" Tammy answers with a one-word glacier. No yelling. No crying. No throwing things or demanding attention. Just a wall. And Amy, who built her entire identity around being the sister who could climb Tammy's walls, suddenly finds herself standing outside in the cold with no grappling hook. The other family members, Chris, Amanda, Misty, find themselves trapped in the middle like UN peacekeepers without a functional helicopter. Chris, the de facto patriarch, tries the gentle approach first. He sits Tammy down and says, "She's your sister. Y'all have been through worse." Tammy looks at him with those calm, post-rehab eyes and replies, "That's the problem. We've been through worse, and she still hasn't learned to keep her mouth shut about my business." Chris has no comeback for that because, technically, Tammy is right. Amy has a long history of treating Tammy's privacy as public domain, joking about her weight on camera before Tammy was ready, sharing details about her breathing crises, even laughing about her failed relationships. It was always framed as keeping it real or sisterly honesty. But now Tammy is naming it for what it is: a betrayal of trust that got laughs but cost dignity. Amanda tries a different angle. She pulls Amy aside and says, "You need to just apologize. Straight up. No buts." Amy, exhausted and defensive, fires back. "Apologize for what? Telling the truth? She's been telling my business for years." And there it is, the crux of the entire Slaton sibling dynamic. Both sisters believe they are the injured party. Both have receipts. Both have spent decades in a silent competition over who has suffered more, who has sacrificed more, who has been more misunderstood. Amy sees herself as the sister who gave up her 20s to wipe down Tammy's kitchen counters and drive her to failed doctor's appointments. Tammy sees herself as the sister who was abandoned the moment Amy got a husband and a surgery and a life. Neither perspective is false. Neither is complete. The tragedy of "she's dead to me" is that it doesn't come from hatred. It comes from exhausted love. You cannot kill someone who meant nothing to you. You can only kill someone who has died and resurrected in your heart so many times that you've lost count of the resurrections. Every time Tammy nearly died from her weight pneumonia, blood clots, respiratory failure, Amy was there, crying in the waiting room, begging God not to take her. And every time Tammy survived, Amy would whisper, "I can't do this again." But she did, again and again, until she couldn't. And that's the dirty secret neither of them wants to say out loud. Amy burned out on saving Tammy years ago. She just kept showing up out of guilt, out of habit, out of fear that if she stopped, she'd become the villain of her own story. Now Tammy doesn't need saving. For the first time, she's walking with a cane instead of a wheelchair. She's breathing without oxygen. She's lost over 100 pounds and counting. She has goals: skin removal surgery, traveling, maybe even a relationship that doesn't involve an enabler with a vape pen. And in a cruel irony, just as Tammy becomes capable of a real, equal adult relationship, Amy is no longer capable of participating. Because a real, equal adult relationship requires apologies, requires accountability, requires looking at your own reflection and saying, I hurt you, and that was wrong, even if I was tired, even if I had babies, even if you hurt me first. Amy can't do that yet. Every time she gets close, she circles back to her own pain. You don't know how hard it was to be your sister. You don't know what I gave up. You don't know how many times I cried in the car after you screamed at me. And all of that is true. But it's also irrelevant to the specific wound Tammy is nursing right now, the wound of having her private therapy struggles turned into family gossip. That wound doesn't care about Amy's past sacrifices. That wound wants one sentence. I'm sorry. I was wrong. It won't happen again. And Amy, whether out of pride or exhaustion or genuine inability to separate her own martyrdom from her sister's needs, cannot say those words. So the silence stretches on. Days turn into weeks of filming. Producers start getting nervous, not because the drama is bad for ratings, it's excellent for ratings, but because the show's entire premise is built on the Amy and Tammy engine. If that engine seizes permanently, what is 1,000-Pound Sisters? A show about three relatively functional siblings and one who just lost 200 pounds and doesn't need a storyline? That's not a reality show. That's a health documentary. And Tammy, sharp as ever, knows this. In a confessional, she says something that cuts to the bone. People think I'm the dumb one, the fat one who can't talk right. But I know exactly what's happening. Amy's not sorry. She's just scared of losing her spot on the show. There's a difference. Whether that accusation is fair or not, it lands with the force of a punch. Because Amy has always been more publicly aware of the show's machinery than Tammy. Amy understood from season 1 that drama equals airtime, and airtime equals income, and income equals independence from their dead-end Kentucky town. Tammy, by contrast, treated the cameras as a nuisance, something to yell at when she was hungry or cry into when she was lonely. Now the roles have reversed. Tammy is the one speaking with calm, cutting clarity. And Amy is the one fumbling for the right thing to say, the right tear to cry, the right camera angle to salvage her image. But here's the question that lingers after the credits roll. Is this really the end? Or is this just the most painful beginning of a new phase in their relationship? If you look at the history of estranged siblings' real estrangement, the kind that lasts decades, there are certain hallmarks. Complete cessation of communication, blocked numbers, moved away addresses, holidays spent separately without a single text. By those standards, Amy and Tammy are not estranged. They're still in the same rooms, still breathing the same air, still watching each other from across the family dinner table. That's not death. That's a Cold War. And Cold Wars can thaw, especially when the combatants share a mother, a history, and a television contract. But thaws require heat. And the heat has to come from somewhere other than a producer's suggestion. Tammy has made her position clear, an apology, not a deflection. Amy has made her position equally clear, if less verbally. I'll show up, I'll bring the babies, and eventually she'll forget why she was mad. Those two positions cannot coexist forever. Something has to crack. Either Amy will swallow her pride and deliver the apology Tammy is waiting for, or Tammy will decide that her new, healthier life has no room for a sister who treats her like a burden disguised as a loved one. One possible future. Time does its slow, unglamorous work. Months pass. The sharp edges of the argument wear down. Amy's babies grow older, giving her more emotional bandwidth. Tammy's health continues to improve, giving her less reason to view every conflict as a life-or-death betrayal. They meet on neutral ground: a holiday, a birthday, a doctor's waiting room, and someone makes a joke. Not a cruel joke. A stupid, small, familiar joke that only the two of them would find funny. And they laugh. And then they cry. And then they really talk. Not the performative conversations they've been having for cameras. And Amy finally says, "I'm sorry I shared your stuff. That was wrong." And Tammy finally says, "I'm sorry I said you were dead to me. That was wrong too." Another possible future. The Cold War freezes solid. Amy stops reaching out altogether, tired of being rebuffed. Tammy stops waiting for an apology that will never come. They become those siblings who see each other at funerals and graduations, exchanging tight-lipped nods and asking about the kids. The show continues, but the producers pivot more focus on Tammy's solo journey, more focus on Chris and Amanda's weight loss efforts, more focus on whatever drama the extended family can generate. The ratings dip but don't die. Amy and Tammy become a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks blood ties are unbreakable. A third, darker possibility. One of them has a health crisis. Given their medical histories, this is not morbid speculation. It's statistical probability. Amy's post-surgery weight gain puts her at risk for complications. Tammy's body, even after 100-plus pounds lost, has been battered by years of extreme obesity. A hospitalization, an ICU stay, a moment of genuine fear that's the kind of event that can shatter a Cold War overnight. Nothing makes you forgive your sister's flaws like watching a nurse wheel her away on a gurney. But that's not a reconciliation anyone should wish for. It's an emergency repair, not a renovation. So where does She's Dead to Me leave us, the audience? In a place of uncomfortable recognition. Because almost everyone who watches this show has had a relationship sibling, parent, friend, partner that reached a similar breaking point. A moment when love curdled into exhaustion. When the ledger of past hurts became too heavy to carry. When someone said something unforgivable, or maybe just something unforgivable enough for right now. And we remember what we chose. We remember whether we walked away or stayed. We remember whether we apologized or doubled down. And we watch Amy and Tammy, hoping they make the choice we wish we had made, or validating the choice we did make. The truth is, Amy and Tammy will probably survive this. Not because they're destined for a fairy tale reunion, but because they are, at their cores, survivors. They have survived poverty, obesity, grief, public humiliation, and their own worst impulses. They will survive this fight too, one way or another. The question is not whether they will speak again. The question is what kind of relationship will exist when the speaking resumes. Will it be the old relationship, codependent, enmeshed, dramatic, exhausting? Or will it be something new, scarred but honest, distant but respectful, less loving but less painful? The show hasn't answered that yet. Maybe it never will. Some stories don't have endings. They have continuations. Amy and Tammy's story will continue after the cameras stop rolling, after the Twitter fights die down, after the next season premieres. They will still be sisters. They will still carry the same DNA, and the same hometown, and the same ghosts. And one day, one of them will pick up the phone. And the other will answer. When She's Dead to Me aired, the internet didn't just react. It erupted. Within hours, every corner of reality TV fandom had drawn a battle line. Team Tammy and Team Amy emerged like political factions, complete with hashtags, essay-length Facebook posts, and YouTube videos with titles in all caps. And what's fascinating, what's genuinely instructive, is how perfectly the fan split mirrored the sisters' own blind spots. Team Tammy argued, with growing ferocity, that Amy had been a toxic caretaker for years. They pointed to clips from older seasons, Amy rolling her eyes while Tammy struggled to breathe, Amy laughing about Tammy's failed diets while munching on fast food, Amy airing Tammy's private therapy moments on camera without consent. Amy is a classic enabler who hides behind, "I'm just being honest." One viral tweet read, "She kept Tammy sick because being sick kept Amy needed." That's a harsh reading, but not an empty one. There is a version of Slaton family history where Amy's identity as the responsible one required Tammy to remain one. When Tammy started getting better, truly better, not just rehab for the cameras, better, Amy didn't know who she was anymore. And instead of celebrating her sister's growth, she sabotaged it with gossip and deflection. Team Amy, equally loud and equally convinced, countered that Tammy had spent decades abusing Amy's loyalty. They brought receipts too. Tammy screaming at Amy on camera, Tammy blaming Amy for her own eating choices, Tammy threatening suicide when Amy tried to set boundaries. Tammy only wants Amy around as a verbal punching bag, another viral post argued. The moment Amy stopped playing that role, Tammy discarded her like garbage. She's Dead to Me isn't a boundary. It's emotional blackmail. This reading also has teeth. Tammy has a long, documented history of using extreme language to control the people around her. "I'm gonna die and it's your fault" is not a cry for help. It's a weapon. And weapons, even when wielded by someone in pain, leave scars. Neither side is wrong. Neither side is complete. And that's the trap of watching reality TV with a moral scorecard. We want a villain and a victim. We want to know whose fault it is, so we can feel righteous about our opinion. But Amy and Tammy's relationship didn't break because one of them is bad and the other is good. It broke because they built their entire lives on a foundation of mutual dysfunction, and when one of them started building a healthier structure, the old foundation cracked. That's not malice. That's math. The producers, of course, understood this immediately. If you watch the episodes closely, really closely, the way you'd watch a magic trick to spot the sleight of hand, you can see the production team's fingerprints all over the aftermath. The way the cameras linger on Tammy's silent, turned-away face for an extra 3 seconds. The way the editing isolates Amy in wide shots, making her look smaller and more alone. The way the confessional questions are clearly designed to provoke maximum emotion. Tammy, how does it feel to know your sister betrayed you? Amy, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive yourself? These are not neutral inquiries. These are narrative tools. The producers know that "She's Dead to Me" is the best thing that has happened to the show's ratings since Tammy.